She healed the Alpha King. By midnight, 100 wolves surrounded her home as a gripping paranormal romance of werewolves, magic, and the bonds that transcend both life and legacy. Chapter 1. The night had broken open in thunder. The storm was a living beast, thrashing against the pines that walled Ilara's drive. Her headlights cut 2 weak tunnels through the downpour. Wipers slapped frantically, but the rain still blurred everything. She leaned closer to the wheel, shoulders aching from the 12-hour shift. Another emergency call, another body she couldn't save. The weight of it pressed against her ribs like a stone. Her little cabin at the edge of the forest had never looked so far away. She pulled in, gravel crunching under her tires, and cut the engine. Silence didn't greet her. The storm howled louder in the absence of the motor, and wind shoved at the car as if urging her to stay inside. She pressed her palm against the steering wheel, drew a breath, and whispered, "Almost home." The porch light flickered, a feeble glow trembling against sheets of rain. She grabbed her bag and bolted out, boots splashing into puddles that swallowed her ankles. Her hair clung wet against her cheeks as she ran for the cabin. Halfway up the steps, she froze. Something dark sprawled across her porch. At first, she thought a fallen branch had been hurled there by the storm, but branches didn't bleed. A crimson slick shone in the lightning flash, crawling toward the edge of the wood. Her breath hitched. It wasn't a branch at all. It was a wolf. A massive one, fur-matted, chest heaving shallowly, eyes shut tight against pain. Its size alone made her stomach knot. It was larger than any she had ever seen. And the smell of iron, heavy and wrong, filled the air. She should have turned. She should have run back to the car and driven until headlights and sirens drowned out this nightmare. But she didn't. Her body, tired and trembling, moved without asking her permission. She dropped her bag and crouched low. "Hey," she whispered, though her voice shook. The wolf's ear twitched faintly at the sound. Its breathing rasped, wet and ragged. Blood pooled beneath it, steaming in the cold rain. The wound wasn't normal. Even from a distance, she saw the metallic gleam threaded through the gash near its ribs. Silver. Her mind tried to deny it. This was impossible. Silver poisoning was a myth from folklore, from firelight tales whispered to children. Yet here it was, searing through muscle and fur. The wolf shuddered, as if sensing her hesitation. Her hands, which had compressed human chests, sutured torn skin, and steadied IV lines, trembled now. But instinct won. Training buried deeper than fear shoved her forward. "Stay with me," she murmured, as if speaking to any patient on her stretcher. The storm hammered harder, rain drumming against the porch roof, thunder rattling the boards. She reached for her kit with clumsy fingers, yanked it open, and dug for gauze. The wolf's flank lifted once, then fell with a grunt that sounded almost human. "Don't you dare quit on me!" She pressed the gauze to the wound. Heat burned against her skin, searing through the wet fabric. The wolf's eyes snapped open. Amber, not the dull gold of animal eyes. These burned with something older, something aware. They locked on her, and her breath caught in her throat. Lightning split the sky, white fire flashing in those eyes. Her pulse pounded louder than the thunder. Those eyes weren't just watching, they were pleading. She swallowed hard. Compassion rose like a tide, drowning fear. "I've got you," she whispered. Her knees soaked through as she leaned closer. The wolf shifted under her touch, a tremor rippling down its length. The boards groaned beneath its weight. She kept pressure on the wound, blood slicking her fingers. Each shallow breath rattled against her palm. Her lips trembled with silent prayers she didn't know she still remembered. "Please," she wreathed. Then the world tilted. The wolf shuddered violently, body convulsing. A crack tore through the air, not thunder, not lightning, bones shifting, reshaping beneath her hands. She staggered back, dropping the gauze. Fur receded, skin stretched, the shape on her porch splitting between man and beast. Her gasp caught sharp in her chest. Where the wolf had lain, a man now sprawled, naked, pale, streaked with blood and rain. He was huge, every line of him honed by strength and survival, chest rising shallowly beneath the gash she had pressed. Her mind screamed to move, to run, to unsee what she had just witnessed. But her feet rooted. Her eyes were locked on his face, dark hair plastered against his forehead, lips parted around ragged breaths. And his eyes, still that same impossible amber, fixed on her. She felt heat lance through her chest, fierce and inexplicable. Not fear. Something deeper, something that made her throat tighten. The man's voice was broken glass dragged through silence. "You saved me." The words, weak and hoarse, cracked her wide-open world into something unrecognizable. Her hands shook, but still they reached. She pulled his head into her lap without thinking. His skin was fever-hot beneath her touch, slick with rain and blood. He groaned, not in protest, but in relief. She cradled him against her thighs, fingers brushing his hair away from his temple. The storm bellowed around them, but the moment felt impossibly still. He exhaled, ragged, as though her touch was the only tether left holding him here. The cabin light flickered above, lightning echoing its pulse. Her breath steadied against his cheek, though her heart thundered wildly. For years, she had given comfort to strangers, to dying men and broken women she would never know again, but this was different. Her hands were the first kindness he had known in years, and his amber eyes burned with that recognition. He tried to speak again, but words failed him. She hushed him softly, fingertips trailing against his damp temple. "Don't," she whispered. "You're safe. I've got you." And in that fragile, storm-lashed moment, neither of them knew that the course of both their lives had just changed forever. Chapter 2. The night pressed harder against the cabin walls, as though the storm itself wanted to claw its way inside. Elara stood in the dim glow of a single lamp, her breath uneven, her hands still sticky with Kaelin's blood. She had thought the impossible transformation from wolf to man was the limit of what her heart could endure, but she was wrong. The first howl shattered the silence. It rose from the tree line, deep and mournful, vibrating through the air like the strike of a drum. Elara stiffened. Another howl answered, sharper, closer, until the sound seemed to surround the cabin from every direction. The storm had brought more than rain. It had brought them. Her eyes darted to the windows, rain streaming down the glass in silver ribbons. Shadows moved between the trees, fluid and purposeful. Shapes too large to be dogs, too swift to be deer. Her chest tightened. Wolves. On the floor, Kaelin stirred. Even in his weakened state, his body tensed like a bowstring pulled too tight. His amber eyes flickered open, fever bright but steady. "They've come," he rasped, voice low as thunder. Your people?" Elara whispered, though she already knew. He gave the faintest nod, his lips pressed together, then parted again, words escaping with difficulty. "Do not open the door, not unless you choose it." Before she could ask what that meant, claws scraped against the porch. The sound jolted through her nerves like electricity. A voice followed, gravelly, commanding, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who had shouted orders all his life. "Alpha!" the man called. "We know you're in there! Open the door!" Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. She clutched the edge of the table to steady herself, the wood biting into her palm. This was no ordinary night, no ordinary threat. These weren't strangers she could call the police on, weren't neighbors to be reasoned with. They were wolves, his wolves. Kaelin tried to push himself upright, grimacing as pain shot through him. "That's Jax," he murmured. "My beta. He'll never wait quietly." Another scrape at the door, harder this time. "You're bleeding. You need us. Don't keep us out." Ilara's mouth went dry. "They sound angry." "They're afraid," Kaelin corrected softly. His gaze caught hers, sharp despite the shadows under his eyes. "Afraid of losing me. Afraid of you." The words chilled her. Afraid of her. She was just a paramedic, a woman who'd stumbled into something far beyond her understanding. But there was no mistaking the tension in the air, the way the wolves outside circled the cabin like predators deciding whether to strike. "Open the door," The beta barked again, his patience fraying. Alara flinched. Her instinct screamed to obey, to give them what they wanted so they would leave, but Kalen's hand shot out, surprisingly strong, gripping her wrist. His skin burned with fever, yet his hold was steady. "No," he said, voice carrying a weight that pinned her in place. "You saved me. That bound you to protection rights. This home is sacred now. They cannot cross without your will." Her breath caught. Protection rights? Sacred homes? These were words that belonged to myths, not to her small wooden cabin. She wanted to laugh, to deny, but the gravity in his voice left no room for disbelief. "Whoever's in there with him," Jax growled. "You're keeping our alpha from us. That makes you a danger. Let us see him, or we'll take him ourselves." The growl behind the words made her stomach twist. She could picture them outside, massive bodies, gleaming teeth, eyes glowing in the rain-soaked dark. But Kalen squeezed her wrist once, a silent plea. His gaze held hers, and though she saw pain there, she also saw trust. It was that trust, inexplicable and fragile, that steadied her shaking hands. She drew a breath, found her voice, and called out through the storm, "He's alive, he's hurt, I'm treating him, but no one comes inside." The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. The wind howled, the rain pounded, but the pack outside said nothing. For a moment, Alara feared they would break the door down anyway. Then she heard it, a low snarl, echoed by several others, circling the cabin like thunder rolling across the ground. Her courage faltered. Her knees wavered, but she stood her ground, fingers pressed against Kalen's fevered skin as though drawing strength from his heat. Kalen's lips curved in the faintest of smiles, almost imperceptible, yet it reached his eyes. "Your hands," he whispered, his voice raw, "steadier than mine ever were." The words pierced her more deeply than the snarls outside. She blinked at him, her throat tight. He had seen her trembling, he had seen her fear, and still he called her steady. A strange warmth spread through her chest, confusing in its sweetness. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was breaking apart inside, but when she looked at him, so strong even in weakness, so sure even in pain, she couldn't speak. Outside, Jax's voice rose again, frustration sharpening it to a blade. "Alpha, command her to open the door." Kalen's eyes fluttered shut, his breath shallow, but his voice held iron. "Not tonight, Jax. She holds the door. I trust her." The last words lingered in the air, soft as an oath, binding Alara tighter than any command could. Her chest ached. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't wanted it, yet something inside her shifted. She no longer felt like just a paramedic standing in the wrong storm. She felt chosen. The wolves circled on, restless, their howls blending with the wind. Shadows swept across the windows, flashes of amber eyes cutting through the rain. The cabin groaned beneath the storm. Bah! It stood. And so did she. Alara sat beside Kalen, her back straight, though her body trembled. She pressed the damp cloth to his brow, her hand brushing his temple with a tenderness that startled her. His eyes opened halfway, catching her in their golden light. "You should be afraid," he murmured. "I am," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "But that doesn't mean I'll let you die." Something flickered in his gaze then, surprise, and something deeper, unspoken. It was not the look of a man used to being cared for. It was the look of someone starved for gentleness, someone who had not felt safe in another's hands for far too long. Alara's heart beat painfully. She didn't know if she was protecting him from the storm or from himself, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She couldn't push him away, not now. And outside, the wolves prowled the night, waiting, testing, but held at bay by a boundary older than law, older than blood. Inside the little cabin, under the flickering glow of lamplight, a fragile bond was born, between the healer who should have run and the alpha who would not let her go. The storm raged, the pack circled, but Alara stayed. And Kalen, broken yet unbowed, leaned into her touch, as though for the first time in years he had found something worth surrendering to. Chapter 3. The storm had not quieted. It prowled around the cabin with the same persistence as the wolves outside, every gust rattling the glass panes as though trying to pry them loose. Inside, Alara sat at Kalen's side, her hand pressed to his fever-warmed brow. The heat of him worried her. It wasn't the warmth of a healing wound, but the fire of something festering, spreading. She peeled the blanket back from his shoulder and leaned closer. The gash along his ribs glistened in the lamplight, angry and inflamed. The edges of the wound weren't just red, they shimmered faintly, as though dusted with ash and metal. A sour scent rose from it, sharp enough to sting her nose. She frowned. She had seen infection before, but never like this. "Kalen," she whispered, brushing damp strands of hair from his temple. "It's worse." His eyes flickered open, heavy-lidded. The amber that had burned so fiercely now looked clouded, dulled by exhaustion. His voice was a rasp, nearly swallowed by the storm. "Silver," he murmured. "Not clean. Tainted." Before Alara could question him, a knock came at the door. Not claws this time, but the thud of a fist. She startled, heart leaping, but Kalen shook his head weakly. "It's Jax. Let him speak." With trembling steps, Alara approached the door but did not unbolt it. "What do you want?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Alpha is failing," the voice answered, deep, commanding, yet tinged with worry. "The bullet wasn't ordinary, it was laced with craft. You can't mend it alone." Her stomach dropped. Craft. Did he mean magic? She pressed her back against the door, her mind whirling. "What do you mean?" Another voice joined in, quieter, steadier, but no less fierce. "Silver cursed by a witch," the second man said. Finn, Kalen's packmate. "Even we can't draw it out. It will spread through him until his body yields." Her throat tightened, tears burning behind her eyes. She turned to look at Kalen, his chest rising shallowly, his skin slick with sweat. She couldn't lose him, not after everything, his trust, his words, the way he looked at her as though she mattered. Alara returned to his side, pressing both hands around the wound. She had nothing but gauze, water, and willpower. But as she leaned over him, something strange stirred inside her chest, deep as marrow. A thrum, a pull, as if invisible threads tugged at her veins. Her breath hitched. Kalen groaned, arching slightly under her touch. "Don't," he muttered weakly. "It will hurt you." But she couldn't stop. Something in her blood demanded action. Her palms burned, not with pain, but with light. Soft at first, faint shimmer in her skin, like moonlight reflected on water. She gasped, trying to pull away, but Kalen's hand caught her wrist, weak but insistent. His eyes opened wider, gleaming. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. The glow intensified, spilling from her fingers into the wound. The air hummed, thick with energy. She felt it, something foul and biting, writhing beneath her palms. The corruption fought her touch, snapping like sparks, but she pressed harder, teeth gritted, heart pounding. The wound sizzled. Dark threads, like smoke made solid, rose from his skin, coiling upward before dissolving into the air. Kalen hissed in pain, his body taut, but he did not let go of her wrist. Alara's vision blurred, her breath quickening as exhaustion crashed over her. Still, she pushed, guided by an instinct she didn't understand. The corruption ebbed, pulling back, though not completely. When her strength gave out, the glow faded, leaving her hands trembling and her body cold with sweat. She collapsed forward, catching herself on his chest. His heartbeat thudded weakly against her ear. For a moment, she thought she had killed him. Then he exhaled, a sound of relief and disbelief mingled, and she realized he was alive. Outside, silence fell among the wolves. Then Jax's voice cut through, hard and wary. "What did you do?" Alara raised her head, startled. Had they seen through the window? She turned and found several silhouettes pressed close to the glass, eyes glowing with suspicion. Finn's voice followed, softer but sharper. "She glowed. I saw it. Her hands, lit like fire." A murmur rippled through the unseen crowd. "She's not human," Jax growled. The words sliced into her. Not human. They weren't wrong. She had felt it herself. the alien pull of power in her veins, the way her body had responded without her consent, but hearing it aloud made her chest clench with fear. She stumbled back, shaking her head. I I don't know what I did, she stammered, her eyes darting to Kaelin. I didn't mean. He reached for her hand, weak but steady, catching her beefed. Or she could pull away. His palm, fever warm and rough, closed around her trembling fingers. His gaze locked on hers, amber glowing despite his exhaustion. Don't fear it, he murmured, voice hoarse. Your touch feels like home. The word struck her harder than any storm outside. Home. In that moment, with wolves circling, with shadows pressing at her walls, she felt a warmth she hadn't known in years. Her throat ached with unshed tears. She wanted to deny it, to push the feeling away, but Kaelin's grip tightened, anchoring her. His eyes closed again, but not before she saw it. The trust, the gratitude, the hint of something deeper sparking between them. Outside, the pack stirred uneasily, suspicion mingling with awe. Their alpha had been touched by something beyond their understanding, and the woman who had done it was no longer just a stranger. She was something else, something dangerous. Elara sat there in the dim lamplight, shaking, afraid of what she had unleashed within herself. But as Kaelin breathed more evenly, the fever easing just slightly under her hands, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever she was becoming, she had saved him, and she would not turn away. Chapter 4. The silence after the glow faded was thick enough to choke on. Elara's hand slipped from Kaelin's chest, trembling, her fingers pale as if the light had drained them of life. For a moment, the room held nothing but the crackle of the fire and the ragged sound of Kaelin's breathing. She told herself it was over, that she had fought back whatever darkness festered inside him. But when his body tensed, when his back arched and his breath turned to a groan, dread knifed through her chest. The wound that had dulled beneath her touch began to shimmer again, silver threads snaking outward like veins of poison. His amber eyes clouded, pupils narrowing to slits as he tried to fit. Got it, his hands clenching against the blanket she had wrapped around him. Elara's stomach dropped. She hadn't banished the corruption. She had only pressed it back for a moment, and now it surged. With vengeance, hungrier than before. No, no, stay with me, she whispered, clutching his shoulder as if her human strength could anchor him. Jack swore under his breath. Finn's usually silent presence shifted at the door, his jaw tight, his gaze dark. It's spreading faster, Jax muttered. If it reaches his heart. Don't say it, Elara cut him off sharply. Fear sharpened her tone, but beneath it was something deeper, something desperate. She could not let him slip away, not after she had felt the spark of warmth when he whispered her touch felt like home, not after she had seen him trust her when even his own pack doubted. Whispers rose at the edges of her thoughts. At first she thought it was panic, the storm outside rattling her senses. But the voices grew clearer, soft, feminine, layered with echoes of countless years. You are not powerless. You carry what they fear. Her breath hitched. She staggered back from Kaelin, clutching her head, trying to quiet the voices that weren't hers. But the heat of his body pulled her forward again. She couldn't run. She wouldn't. I don't know what to do, she confessed aloud, her voice breaking. Kaelin's fevered gaze flicked to her, unfocused but unyielding. Trust yourself, he rasped, the effort scraping his throat raw. You already saved me once. Her healer's instinct screamed at her to try again, but logic warned her she was meddling with forces she didn't understand. The corruption was alive, clawing inside him, feeding on his strength. To touch it again might kill her. To do nothing would kill him. Her pulse thundered. The choice wasn't fair, but it was hers. Elara sank to her knees beside him, palms hovering above the wound. The voices sharpened, weaving instructions she barely understood. Sigils whispered in the rhythm of her heart, threads of power tugging at her blood. She pressed her hand to his chest and toe. He world shifted. A surge of icy fire coursed through her, blistering her veins, dragging a scream from her throat. The silver wrought writhed against her, coiling upward, trying to seep into her skin. She wanted to recoil, to tear her hand away, but Kalen's pained groan pinned her there. He needed her. That was enough. The voices guided her, chanting through her bones. Draw it out, bind it, take what you can bear. Her body convulsed as darkness bled from Kalen into her. His chest heaved with sudden clarity as hers tightened, her lungs clawing for air. She felt the poison curl into her spirit, searing her nerves with every heartbeat. Her hands glowed, brighter than before, until the cabin itself seemed to tremble beneath the light. Then, as quickly as it had come, the corruption snapped loose. Kalen slumped against the bedding, gasping, while Ilara collapsed forward, her forehead striking his shoulder. The glow vanished, leaving only the stench of burnt metal and the faint hiss of rain against the roof. Her body shook violently. Her breath came in broken sobs, every nerve in her arms screaming. She tried to push herself up but faltered, her strength drained beyond measure. Darkness tugged at the corners of her vision. "Ilara!" Jax's voice cracked, sharper than she had ever heard it. He stepped forward, his hand half raised as though to catch her, but it wasn't him who steadied her. Kalen's hand, heavy but warm, rose to brush against her damp temple. His thumb swept a stray strand of hair from her face, clumsy from weakness but achingly gentle. You gave me back breath," he murmured, his voice hoarse but steadier than moments before, "and nearly took it from yourself." Her lips parted, trembling with words she couldn't find. All she managed was a broken, "I had to." The pack stood silent, shadows in the flickering firelight. For the first time, suspicion loosened in their eyes. Finn's rigid stance eased, and even Jax's expression wavered, torn between anger and something resembling reluctant awe. "She took it into herself," Jax said at last, his voice quiet, almost reverent. "She bled with him." Ilara swallowed hard, shivering against Kalen's touch. "It's still in me," she whispered, terrified of what she had absorbed, terrified of what it meant. Kalen's fingers lingered, brushing the sweat from her brow, as if she were the one in need of saving now. The alpha who commanded warriors, the man who carried storms in his gaze, bowed over her with something softer than duty. "Then I will bear it with you," he vowed, the weight of his promise sinking deep into the marrow of her fear. Her lashes fluttered closed. She wanted to argue, to deny the bond forming in the quiet between their breaths, but her exhaustion stole the words. All she could feel was the steady warmth of his hand, the humbling tenderness of an alpha lowering himself to comfort her. And in that fragile moment, with shadows whispering in her blood and her body trembling from the cost of magic, Ilara realized she wasn't standing on the edge of two worlds anymore. She was already falling into his. Chapter 5. The fire had burned low by the time Ilara awoke, the cabin wrapped in the hush of the night after the storm. Her body ached in ways she hadn't known were possible. Every muscle, every tendon, even the tips of her fingers seemed scorched by the memory of the light she had drawn into herself. She shifted on the blanket Kalen had draped over her, wincing at the soreness, at the tremor that refused to leave her hands. Kalen sat opposite her, still, watching her with an intensity that both unnerved and comforted her. His amber eyes, softened by exhaustion, were fixed on her like a lighthouse's beam cutting through fog. For the first time, she saw vulnerability in him, not the fire of the alpha who commanded the pack, but the quiet uncertainty of a man tethered to the world by trust he had rarely given. "You slept," he said quietly, voice hoarse. "See, careful not to wake the others." "Rested you good?" Ilara swallowed against the lump in her throat. "A little," she admitted. She flexed her fingers, still trembling. "But I feel like I've changed. Like part of me isn't entirely mine anymore." Kalen's gaze softened further. He shifted closer, hands resting lightly on his knees. "You have always carried something different," he said. "I just didn't know it existed until tonight." She looked away, eyes tracing the cracked wooden floor, the glow of embers in the fireplace. She had saved him. She had risked herself, and yet the fear of what she could do, what she had already done, gnawed at her like a persistent shadow. "I don't know if I belong here," she whispered, voice small. "I don't belong to this world, or to that one, really. I'm caught between something I can't control and something I've never understood." Kalen's expression shifted, a mixture of empathy and something deeper, something raw and protective. "Pack law is not just about orders," he began, voice low and steady. "It is about trust, about responsibility, about knowing who will stand with you when the world outside this cabin wants to tear you apart." She met his gaze, noting the weight in his words. There was more than instruction here. There was invitation, and even more terrifying, there was honesty. "Your world," he continued, "is not mine. My world has rules, danger, enemies you've never imagined. But if you choose to stay, you will understand them and you will understand me." Alara nodded slowly, absorbing each word. Her heart ached at the thought of walking the edge between the life she had known and the one that now stretched out before her. A life of magic, of pack loyalty, of dangerous bonds she couldn't yet name. The crack of wood against stone outside drew her attention. Rain had ceased, but shadows moved along the tree line. A ripple of unease ran through her, as if instinct sensed a threat before the mind could name it. Kalen stiffened as well, ears twitching, muscles coiling. Jax's absence hit first as a thought, then as panic. The beta had been a quiet presence, a grounding force in Kalen's pack, and now he was gone. Finn's voice joined the whispering night. "He's gone. Taken." Elara's stomach fell. "Taken?" she echoed, voice tight. "Silas's pack," Finn replied. "They struck while the storm drew your attention inside. We barely saw them leave." A fire of anger and fear ignited inside her chest. She knew what she had to do. Her instincts flared, the same pulsing energy that had guided her hands earlier that night. She closed her eyes and reached out, letting the bond she now shared with Kalen and the pack extend through her consciousness. It was faint at first, a hum, a vibration like a whisper beneath her skin. Then images, fragments, a tree line, the glint of iron, the hush of movement. She knew without a doubt, she could sense Jax's location. Her hands trembled as she opened her eyes, looking to Kalen for reassurance. He nodded, slow, deliberate, understanding dawning on him. "You can feel them," he said. "The pack, their fear, their presence. You're tied to us now." Yes," she breathed, overwhelmed by the clarity and the danger. "I can feel him." His gaze softened in the dim firelight, amber glowing faintly. "I've never trusted anyone outside the pack," he admitted quietly, almost shyly, a stark contrast to the alpha who commanded loyalty without question. "But I trust you." Elara's chest tightened. The words struck her deeper than any physical threat could. Trust. From Kalen. A man whose life had been measured in battles, survival, and betrayal. To hear him whisper it like a promise, like a tether to something solid in her shifting world, shook her to her core. The fire crackled, shadows dancing across the walls as she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She would save Jax. She would learn her power. She would step fully into two. His world, even if it meant leaving behind the one she had known. Kalen reached for her hand across the gap between them. The contact was light, almost hesitant, but it grounded her, anchored her. "You're not alone in this," he murmured, voice low, the spark of a connection between them sparking even in the tension of danger. Her fingers closed over his, warm and solid. A surge of something she couldn't name, comfort, longing, and a strange courage, filled her chest. She was no longer just a bystander. She was a part of something vast, powerful, and terrifying, but also deeply right. The pack outside shifted, unease rising, yet their gazes softened. They recognized the bond, subtle but undeniable. They had seen her sacrifice, her courage, her willingness to face danger. Respect settled over the cabin like the last warmth of embers, acknowledgement without words. Elara drew a deep breath, feeling the hum of magic under her skin, the pulse of the pack through her senses, and the steady heat of Kaelin beside her. She had choices now, between worlds, between fear and trust, between isolation and the fierce, chaotic warmth of belonging. She squeezed his hand, letting the firelight glint off her trembling fingers. "Then we do this together," she whispered. Kaelin's lips curved faintly, exhaustion giving way to the ghost of a smile. "Together," he echoed. The night stretched before them, full of unknowns and dangers, but for the first time, Elara felt the fragile, exhilarating pull of home, somewhere between the human world she had always known and the supernatural life she was only beginning to claim. And as the fire crackled and shadows danced, she realized that the line between fear and belonging had shifted. She was no longer standing at the edge. She had stepped forward. Chapter 6. The night was thick with mist as Elara led the way, her senses heightened, every leaf and stone speaking to her in whispers only she could hear. The abandoned mining camp loomed ahead, jagged silhouettes rising from the earth like the broken teeth of some long-dead giant. Kaelin followed closely, his hand brushing against hers now and then, grounding her in a way that made her chest ache with both longing and responsibility. Finn moved silently beside them, ears twitching at every sound, while Corbin's shadow loomed at the rear, tense and alert. The air smelled of damp iron and rot, a bitter perfume that clung to their clothes. Alara's stomach twisted. She had never felt more alive and more terrified at once. "Traps," she whispered, sensing the subtle pulse of magic woven into the ground. Her hands tingled, a warning, and she knelt to examine a rusted pulley and taut wire hidden in the underbrush. Carefully, she murmured the faint incantations that came to her instinctively, unraveling the snare with fingers glowing faintly in the mist. Kaelin's amber eyes never left her. He understood her power, even if he didn't comprehend it fully, and he respected her mastery. Each trap she dismantled drew a whisper of energy from her, leaving her lightheaded, but she pressed on. "Elara, slow," Finn warned. "Even you can overreach." "I can do this," she replied, her voice tight with concentration. "I have to." Every step forward brought them deeper into Silas's territory. Shadows clung to the jagged walls of the abandoned shafts, and faint movement flickered in the corners of her vision. Illusions designed to mislead, to disorient. Alara's hands hovered over them, tracing invisible lines, unraveling lies woven into the air. Every moment she extended herself, every pulse of magic she sent through the traps, left her weaker, trembling, but she could not stop. Ahead, she sensed Jax, his fear, his pulse, even his stubbornness. She felt it all as clearly as if she were standing over him, her heart clenched. She would not fail him, not now, not ever. The first wave of Silas's defenders appeared like ghosts, twisted by enchantment, eyes gleaming with unnatural light. Kaelin's growl rumbled low, warning, and they engaged immediately, moving with practiced precision. Elara focused, dismantling the illusions as they came, guiding Kaelin and the others with whispers only he could hear, her link with the pack a conduit of survival. Corbin fought fiercely, his skepticism erased by the immediacy of battle. Finn was a shadow beside Kaelin, silent and lethal, but it was Elara who bent reality itself, stripping the enemy's magic away, opening paths and dissolving traps. Her energy burned hot, her skin slick with sweat, her chest heaving with each effort. The closer they got to Jax, the more the backlash of her magic clawed at her. Pain radiated through her arms, up her neck, and deep into her core. Every step required willpower alone. Every incantation pulled at the threads of her life force. Her knees buckled once, twice, but Kaelin's hand was always there, steady, anchoring her. "Don't falter," he urged softly. His voice was a tether, his presence a shield against the suffocating dread. "We need you, Elara." Finally, they reached the chamber where Jax was held. He was bound with iron cuffs, his usual composure shattered by fear and exhaustion. Relief flooded her, mingling with rage at what had been done to him. With Kaelin, Finn, and Corbin breaking through the last line of enchanted guards, she focused all her remaining energy on shattering the magical bonds. The chains hissed and recoiled as her hands glowed with a blinding light. Pain ripped through her chest like fire, every nerve screaming, but Jax collapsed into her arms free, panting, eyes wide with awe. "Elara," he whispered, voice rough. "How?" She could barely respond. Her strength was gone, her body trembling violently. She sagged against him, only Kaelin's arms keeping her upright. Every step out of the chamber was agony. She stumbled, faltering at the threshold of consciousness. Kaelin caught her before she could fall, lifting her effortlessly against his chest. The weight of her exhaustion pressed into him, and he felt the ache of her. Sacrifice settle like stone in his heart. He whispered against her hair, voice tight with emotion, "If you fall, I fall." Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his gaze. For the first time, he let himself be vulnerable, revealing the raw truth of his feelings. The alpha who had never admitted weakness, never trusted outsiders, now bared his soul in a whisper meant only for her. Tears blurred her vision. She reached up, brushing her hand across his cheek, grounding herself in the warmth of him. "Then we rise together," she murmured, voice hoarse, a promise that matched the unspoken bond between them. The journey back was slow. Every step was careful, Kaelin adjusting his hold on her so she wouldn't collapse completely. Finn and Corbin followed closely, silent sentinels, ensuring no further ambush awaited them. Outside, the first light of dawn was brushing the horizon, a soft promise of reprieve. Yet there was no relief in her body, only exhaustion, only the heavy ache of magic spent and a loyalty tested to its limits. When they reached the cabin, Kaelin carried her through the door, laying her gently on the blanket she had lain on so many nights before. He brushed damp strands of hair from her face, his thumb tracing her cheek with painstaking care. "You gave everything," he whispered, "and I—" Her eyes opened slightly, meeting his. She saw the ache, the devotion, the unspoken love in his amber gaze. "I did it because I had to," she murmured, voice trembling. "Because we—" Kaelin closed his eyes briefly, letting the weight of his emotions show. "Because I trust you," he said finally, softer than any command he had ever given, "and because I can't imagine doing any of this without you." Elara's chest swelled with heat, pride, relief, and a fierce, wild longing. Despite her exhaustion, despite the lingering pain of her magic, she felt tethered, held in a way she had never known before. Outside, the pack watched. Their respect deepened, their fear of her tempered by awe. She had led, she had saved, she had risked herself beyond measure, and survived. In Kaelin's arms, she allowed herself a rare, shaky exhale. The world outside was still dangerous, still uncertain, but in that moment, she had found something stronger than fear. She had found devotion, loyalty, and the undeniable spark that had begun to ignite between them. And as Kaelin's fingers traced lazy patterns over her trembling arm, she knew that no matter what came next, they would face it together. Chapter 7. The cabin shivered beneath the weight of the night, the walls creaking as if warning its inhabitants of the storm that had returned, though this one was not of wind and rain. The howls came first, soft, distant, a rising chorus that quickened into a symphony of menace. Then came the silhouettes in the moonlight, shadows moving in unison. Silas's army had arrived. 100 wolves encircled the clearing, eyes gleaming, teeth bared, and voices lifting in a haunting, unbroken chorus. Elara's chest tightened, heart hammering against ribs that felt too fragile for the fear pounding within them. She pressed herself closer to Kaelin, the heat of his body, the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath her hand, grounding her even as the terror outside pressed in. "They're everywhere," Finn muttered, ears twitching, muscles coiled. Corbin stood rigid, growling low, the tension in his jaw mirrored by the entire pack. Each member moved with purpose, weapons readied, claws glinting faintly in the firelight. Every shadow seemed alive, every gust of wind carrying whispers of threat. Alara could feel it before she understood it, the pulse in her blood, the stirring of something ancient and unyielding. Her fingers tingled, her stomach knotted, and a warmth spread from the core of her being, crawling up her spine. Her heritage was calling, whispering with the voices of the long dead, voices she had only glimpsed before in the tremor of magic at her fingertips. A sudden vision blazed behind her eyes, a figure wrapped in shadow and flame, hair like silvered moonlight, eyes dark and endless. Morwenna, her great-grandmother. The witch's smile was cruel, deliberate. "You have power, child," the voice hissed inside her skull, echoing, curling around every thought. "You could bend the light, or you could drown it. Embrace the darkness. Become what you were always meant to be." Alara staggered, clutching her head, shaking violently as the words sliced through her mind. "No," she whispered, almost inaudibly. I am not like you." Kalen's hand tightened on hers, pulling her close. "You're not alone," he said, voice low, fierce, unwavering. "Whatever you are, I'm here. Let me be your anchor." Tears blurred her vision, a mixture of fear, exhaustion, and the raw, desperate desire to remain herself. "I'm terrified of what I am," she admitted, her voice breaking with honesty she had never allowed anyone before. His amber gaze softened, piercing through the darkness like a sun through storm clouds. "Then let me hold you to the ground. Let me remind you who you are." The pack rallied, moving as one under Kalen's command. Wolves shifted, fangs bared, muscles coiling, every member sensing the imminent clash. Alara drew a deep, shuddering breath, feeling the surge of her magic stir, threads of light weaving through the shadows in the corners of the cabin. Outside, Silas's army pressed closer. Their howls rose to a deafening crescendo, and the earth seemed to tremble beneath their collective fury. Every breath Alara took tasted of iron and ozone, every heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of the encircling pack. She felt Morwenna again, the voice teasing, taunting, curling around her thoughts like smoke. "Give in. Let the power flow. Become the storm." Alara's hands clenched, knuckles white against Kalen's. "No," she breathed. "I will not be them. I will not give in." The alpha's lips brushed the top of her head, a quiet affirmation. "Then stand with me. Let them feel your light." The pack moved closer around the cabin, forming a living barrier of fur, claws, and loyalty. Alara could feel their trust, their faith, and it bolstered her resolve. She drew a trembling breath, letting the heat of her bloodline swell within her without letting it consume her. Silas stepped forward in the shadows, taller than any wolf, his presence radiating malice and command. His eyes locked on hers through the windows, and Alara felt the challenge, the temptation to flee, to surrender to power she had barely begun to understand. But Kalen's hand found hers again, and that single touch anchored her. The warmth, the trust, the connection she had begun to lean on in the darkest hours pulled her back from the edge. "You're not alone," he murmured, voice carrying across the storm-lashed clearing. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Her heartbeat steadied. The fear remained, raw and vivid, but she felt defiance stirring, weaving itself with the threads of her magic. Her hands tingled, fingers flexing as if itching to release energy she barely controlled. She could feel the stirrings of light and shadow within her, a power ancient and hungry, but she would bend it to her will. The wolves outside pressed closer, the chorus of howls vibrating through the ground, the trees, the air. Alara could hear the collective heartbeat of Kalen's pack as they prepared for the inevitable clash. Her breath hitched, and she glanced at Kalen. He met her eyes, unwavering, the weight of his trust and devotion anchoring her resolve. "Together," she whispered back, and a flicker of courage sparked in her chest. The night trembled, shadows stretching and bending, as the forces at the gate prepared to strike. Inside, the soul, Abin was alive with the tension of war, the pulse of magic, and the fragile, growing bond between two souls who had found one another amidst chaos. Elara rose, her limbs weak but steady, drawing Kaelin's gaze. "Then let's show them who we are," she said, voice quivering yet resolute. Kaelin nodded, lips brushing hers in a fleeting promise, a spark of intimacy before the storm. "Together," he echoed. The first wolf lunged, breaking the perimeter, and the cabin erupted in motion. Every heartbeat, every nerve, every instinct ignited as Elara felt the rush of power, tempered by defiance, anchored by the man beside her and the pack who had come to trust her. Her bloodline thrummed within her, a mixture of temptation and warning. Morwenna's shadow lingered, but for the first time, Elara felt ready, not to succumb, but to fight, to protect, to define who she truly was. And as the night shuddered with the clash outside, Elara knew that whatever darkness lingered within her, she would face it on her terms, with Kaelin by her side and the pack she had earned behind her. Chapter 8. The first light of dawn barely pierced the smoke and mist surrounding the cabin, but the battlefield outside was alive with motion. Wolves lunged and parried, magic flaring, and the scent of blood hung thick in the air. Alara's chest heaved, heart pounding in rhythm with the chaos beyond the walls, her fingers tingling with the energy thrumming in her blood. Every instinct screamed that this was her fight, the moment that had been building since she had first touched Kaelin's wound in the storm. Then she saw her, a figure emerging from the shadows, walking as though the world bent to her will, Morwenna. Her presence was a sharp contrast to the chaos, a calm, cruel elegance that made Alara's stomach twist. The air seemed to shimmer around her, rippling with ancient power, her silver hair falling like a waterfall of light against the dark horizon. "Elara," Morwenna's voice carried, smooth and laced with venom, echoing through both her mind and the battlefield. "You cannot hide what you are. You were born of my blood, cursed and powerful. You are mine by inheritance, by right." Elara's hands clenched, nails digging into her palms as she fought to keep her fear and revulsion at bay. She took a step forward, shoulders squared despite the tremor of unease coursing through her. "I am not yours," she spat, voice ringing with defiance. "I am me, and I decide what that means." Kaelin stepped beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder, grounding her, lending her his strength in a gesture that spoke louder than words. "You are not alone in this," he murmured, voice low and steady, and she drew courage from his presence, the warmth of his support anchoring her trembling resolve. Morwenna's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Ah, defiance, how human of you. But power is inherited, child, whether you wish it or not. Embrace it, and you will rule. Reject it, and you will crumble." Alara's heart raced. The temptation to give in, to let the darkness inside her take form, was real, tangible, and terrifying. The whispers of her lineage flickered through her mind, testing her, tempting her with visions of strength she had never known. But then she felt Kaelin's hand squeeze hers, a pulse of reassurance and unwavering faith. She drew a slow breath, closing her eyes briefly, and let the fear settle, letting it transform into determination. She would not be the puppet of her ancestry. She would define herself. Her eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with the energy stirring within her. The air around her hummed, and even the wind seemed to pause as she extended her power outward, not to destroy, but to protect. The faint glow traced the outline of her body, a luminous shield against the encroaching darkness. The pack rallied behind her, sensing the shift. Finn, Corbin, and the others tightened their formation, their loyalty bolstered by her courage. Each member moved as if fueled by her resolve, every growl and snap of teeth a testament to the bond they shared. Morwenna's expression faltered for the first time, a flicker of frustration crossing her sharp features. "You could have been extraordinary," she hissed. "All of it, wasted because of human sentiment." "I am extraordinary," Ilara shot back, her voice gaining strength with every word. Not because of what I was born from, but because of what I choose to be. And I choose light and shadow. Both. I am whole. Energy surged from her, coiling and twisting, her fear transmuted into raw, controlled power. The air crackled, the ground shuddered, and the enemy wolves faltered under the force emanating from her. She had claimed her identity, both human and witch, and it radiated outward like the dawn breaking over a storm-ridden night. Kaelin moved beside her seamlessly, not dominating, not overshadowing, but matching her pace and power. Every motion, every protective gesture, every shared glance spoke of partnership. She felt his strength entwine with hers, a mutual force that enhanced rather than eclipsed, and her chest swelled with gratitude and burgeoning love. Morwenna recoiled, her aura clashing against the duality of Ilara's light and shadow. "You dare defy me?" she spat, voice shaking with fury. "I am not defying," Ilara said steadily. "I am becoming myself, and nothing you say will change that." The battle raged around them, but inside Ilara, a calm settled. The fear, the temptation, the heartbreak of her lineage had been met and transformed. She was neither victim nor pawn. She was master of herself, wielding her heritage as a tool of protection rather than a weapon of domination. Kaelin leaned closer, whispering in her ear amidst the chaos. "Whatever comes, I fight beside you. Always. You are never alone in this, Ilara." Her hand found his, a firm grip that carried more than comfort. It carried trust, partnership, and the silent acknowledgement that their bond had matured into something unbreakable. The final wave of Silas's army pressed forward, but the combined force of Ilara, Kaelin, and the pack surged like a tide, repelling them with controlled, precise strikes. Ilara felt the rush of power flow through her, her magic harmonizing with Kaelin's strength, every step and movement an echo of her decision to embrace both halves of herself. Morwenna's shadow receded, and for a moment, silence blanketed the battlefield. The pack, breathless and battered, gathered close, their loyalty unbroken, their faith in Ilara cemented by her courage and defiance. Ilara sank to her knees briefly, exhaustion washing over her, but Kaelin's hand on her shoulder kept her upright. "You did this," he murmured, voice raw with admiration. "You led us. You protected us. You became what you were meant to be on your own terms." She tilted her head, meeting his gaze, warmth flooding her despite the fatigue. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted softly. "You didn't try to carry me. You carried me in every way that mattered." He smiled faintly, the first true lightness she had seen in his expression in weeks. "We carry each other," he said. "That's what it means to stand together. Always." And as the sun finally pierced through the mist, bathing the cabin and its defenders in golden light, Ilara felt the full weight of triumph, heartbreak, and love. She had faced her ancestry, her fear, and her temptation, and emerged whole. She was herself, and she was stronger for it. Beside her, Kaelin's strength and warmth remained steadfast, a living testament to partnership, devotion, and the unspoken promise that no matter what battles lay ahead, they would face them as one. Chapter 9. The battlefield was drenched in moonlight, silver and cold, washing over the cabin, the trees, and the pack as they circled in formation. The air was thick with the scent of blood, wet earth, and the faint metallic tang of magical residue. Ilara's hands trembled, tingling with the surge of power coursing through her veins, a mixture of light and shadow perfectly balanced, coiling like a living thing inside her. She could feel every thread of magic in the air, every heartbeat of the pack, and the tension of the enemy forces pressing close. Kaelin's eyes met hers, amber burning bright in the dim glow. "Are you ready?" he asked softly, voice carrying both command and trust. She nodded, though her chest tightened with exhaustion and the memory of the lives already lost in this war. Silas charged with a roar, teeth bared, claws flashing in the moonlight. The ground shook with the impact of his movements, the raw fury of his ambition radiating like heat. Ilara stepped forward, hands glowing, channeling both the light of her compassion and the shadow of her heritage into a shield around Kaelin, the pack, and herself. Her magic hummed, the energy almost painful in its intensity, but controlled, focused. Kaelin met Silas head-on, his movements a blur of power and precision, each strike a testament to his strength and experience. Ilara's magic flowed through him subtly, empowering his attacks, making his claws sharper, his speed faster, his endurance seemingly limitless. She felt a surge of pride and fear simultaneously, pride for what she could accomplish, and fear for the toll it was taking on her fragile human body. The wolves fell silent, watching the brutal dance of power and fury. Finn and Corbin struck with lethal precision at Silas's minions, while Kaelin and Silas clashed in the center, teeth and claws meeting, sparks of magic erupting with each strike. Ilara's energy flared in response, a protective cocoon radiating outward, and she could feel the pull of Morwenna's magic attempting to pry through, to claim her, to force her into darkness. "Not today," she whispered, voice low, steady, and fierce. She reached deep, letting her magic surge, creating a barrier that rippled like liquid light, shimmering with shadowed undertones. Morwenna hissed in frustration. Ion, unable to penetrate the shield fully, her form flickering like smoke in a storm. Kaelin's roar echoed across the clearing, every strike landing with devastating precision, and Ilara felt the pulse of their combined power resonate through her very bones. Silas faltered, staggered, and with one final surge, Kaelin sent him sprawling, defeated, the brute force of their connection shattering his momentum. Morwenna screamed, the sound piercing and unnatural, and Ilara countered, pouring every ounce of her magic into a focused point, enough to keep the witch at bay, but not destroy her entirely. Morwenna's form wavered, finally retreating into the shadows, leaving a trail of dark energy in her wake. The battlefield fell silent, the howls stilled, the air thick with smoke and tension. Wolves, both ally and enemy, lay fallen, and grief washed over Ilara, a bitter, choking wave. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed, glowing faintly as the remnants of her unstable magic coursed through her. Exhaustion threatened to pull her into darkness, and she trembled, every nerve screaming for rest. Kaelin was at her side in an instant, gathering her in his arms with a strength born of both fury and relief. He held her close, pressing his cheek to hers, breathing steady and warm against her ear. "You've already claimed me," he confessed, voice low, reverent, and intimate, a declaration that carried the weight of promise and unspoken bond. Tears pricked her eyes, both from the exhaustion and the raw emotion of the moment. I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered, voice trembling, the heat of her magic fading as Kaelin's warmth grounded her. He tightened his hold, eyes scanning the battlefield with vigilance even as his body sheltered hers. "And you never will have to," he murmured. "I will always be here, always." The pack gathered around them, circling protective. Ali, silent now, sensing the closure of the battle, but aware that the night had left its mark. Finn and Corbin approached cautiously, their expressions a mixture of respect and awe, while Kaelin's other hand rested lightly on Ilara's back, a gesture of unyielding partnership. Ilara let her breathing slow, feeling the ebb of magical energy, the relief that Morwenna and Silas had retreated. The battlefield, though scarred and littered with the consequences of war, was quiet, almost reverent, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Kaelin lifted her face, his amber eyes soft, luminous with emotion. "You are stronger than anything I've ever known," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "And not just because of your power, because of your heart." Her lips quivered, and she leaned into him instinctively, pressing her forehead to his. "And you've stood with me every step, even when I was afraid of myself." He smiled faintly, brushing damp strands of hair from her cheek. Fear is human, but you are more than human. You are mine as much as I am yours, and that is something no darkness, no battle can ever change. She felt the weight of his words sink deep, a warmth that spread through her chest, mingling with the fading pulse of magic still echoing from her core. Their connection had solidified not through conquest, but through shared risk, shared power, and the unspoken acknowledgement of trust and devotion. The wolves of the pack lingered nearby, silent sentinels, their eyes reflecting the bond between alpha and healer, protector and empowered. The fallen were mourned in silence, respect shown to every life lost, every sacrifice made. Elara allowed herself a rare, shaky exhale, her body finally giving into exhaustion as Kalen cradled her. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, a rhythm that reassured her that even amidst the grief and chaos, they were unbroken. "You're safe," he murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, "and I'll never let anything happen to you. Not now, not ever." Her fingers curled around his shirt, and grounding herself in the solid reality of him beside her. I trust you," she whispered, eyes closing briefly, letting the warmth wash over her like a balm. Kalen's lips brushed hers in a fleeting, intimate touch, a promise of more, a spark of what was to come. "And I trust you," he replied, voice low, steady, unwavering. "Together, we're unstoppable." The night stretched, calm now but heavy with the memory of what had passed. The moon glowed softly overhead, casting silver light across the clearing, and Elara felt a mixture of awe, relief, and lingering grief for those who had fallen. She was stronger, whole, and empowered, not just by her heritage, but by the bond forged in fire and blood with Kalen and the pack. She rested in his arms, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat, the security of his strength, and for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to believe that they could face anything together. The whispers of magic had faded, the night held its breath, and the bond between them, silent, unspoken, yet undeniable, glimmered like a star in the shadowed woods. Chapter 10. The first hints of dawn painted the horizon in soft hues of gold and rose, spilling light across the cabin and the surrounding forest. The air smelled of wet earth and the faint tang of spent magic, mingling with the warm musk of the pack gathered nearby. Wolves moved cautiously, muscles coiled yet calm, sensing that the storm had passed and that the danger was gone for now. Elara leaned against Kalen, head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, each thump a reminder that they had survived together. Her arms still trembled slightly from the strain of the past nights, the weight of magic, and the battles that had left them all raw and exhausted. Yet beneath the weariness, a warmth spread, a profound, unshakable sense of relief. The pack milled round the cabin, repairing damages, moving in silent coordination. Finn and Corbin worked in tandem, their eyes occasionally flicking to Elara with unspoken respect. Even the youngest and newest, Wolves, approached her with tentative curiosity, no longer fear, no longer suspicion. They had witnessed her courage, her sacrifices, and now she was part of the family. Kalen shifted, his amber gaze turning to her with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "You've seen everything," he said quietly, voice low yet full of affection. "The darkness, the battles, the losses. And now you must decide. Do you stay with us, or return to the world you once knew?" Elara lifted her head, meeting his gaze, searching the depths of his amber eyes for any hint of expectation or command. There was none. Only patience, trust, and the quiet understanding that her choice would be hers alone. Her chest rose and fell, a shiver running through her as she considered the life she had left behind. Alone, isolated, human, fragile. She thought of the storms she had weathered, the nights she had spent healing strangers, and the quiet, empty rooms of her solitary existence. And then she looked at Kalen, at the pack gathered around the cabin, their eyes reflecting loyalty, courage, and hope. The answer came swiftly, unexpectedly, her heart surging with certainty. I stay, she whispered, voice trembling yet resolute. I choose this, all of you. You are my home. Kalen's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile, and he drew her close, pressing his forehead against hers. Then welcome home, he murmured, voice thick with emotion. You belong here, Alara. With me, with the pack. The wolves around them shifted, sensing the closure, the calm, the harmony settling over the clearing. Jax and Finn exchanged brief, approving glances, while Corbin's expression softened, a faint, respectful nod acknowledging her place among them. The full moon rose higher, casting silver light over the scene, illuminating the cabin, the forest, and the pack that had become her family. The glow seemed to embrace Elara and Kalen, bathing them in ethereal warmth, a spotlight for the intimacy and trust that had blossomed between them. Kalen's hand lifted to cup her cheek, thumb brushing gently along her skin, grounding her once more. You've made this your choice, he said softly, voice tender, husky. I won't take it for granted, not for a moment. Elara reached up, threading her fingers through his dark hair, pulling him slightly closer. Her pulse raced, heart soaring with emotion she had never allowed herself to feel so fully before. I know, she whispered, and I mean it. Every word, every heartbeat. He lowered his lips to hers, slow, deliberate, a kiss that spoke of more than passion. It carried promise, trust, and the culmination of everything they had endured together. Her fingers curled against his neck, pressing closer, and she felt the solid, unshakable strength of his presence. The kiss deepened, a shared acknowledgement that their bond was no longer tentative, no longer implied. It was sealed by choice, by heart, and by the trials they had faced. The pack watched silently, respectful witnesses to this sacred moment. No growl, no movement, no sound disturbed the intimacy. Even the smallest wolf lay still, eyes fixed on the couple, as if acknowledging that love, courage, and belonging were victories as significant as any battle. Elara pulled back slightly, foreheads resting together, breathing mingling, eyes locking in quiet understanding. I've never felt like this before, she admitted softly, voice trembling with awe and relief. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Kalen's smile softened, amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. You are, he said, with me, with the pack. You are home, and I will never let anything take that from you. She let herself absorb the words, the warmth, the unspoken promises that lingered in the air. The fear and uncertain tie of her past life felt distant, replaced with a profound sense of belonging. She could feel the pulse of magic within her, no longer threatening, no longer unstable, tempered by choice, love, and the grounding presence of Kalen and the pack. The wolves circled them slowly, forming a protective ring, and Elara realized she could hear the harmony of their hearts and minds, the unspoken connection she now shared with each member of the pack. The world beyond this clearing was still chaotic, dangerous, and unpredictable, but within this circle, under the full moon, she felt invincible. Kalen brushed a strand of damp hair from her cheek, lips hovering near her ear. This is only the beginning, he murmured. Together, we face everything. Together, we thrive. She leaned into him, pressing her cheek to his chest, breathing in the scent of him, the pack, and the night. Together, she echoed, feeling the word resonate deep within her soul, a vow she was ready to honor with every heartbeat. The first rays of sunlight began to pierce the canopy, scattering diamonds of light across the forest floor. Wolves stretched and shook off the remnants of the night, their howls now soft, celebratory, a symphony of renewal rather than menace. Elara smiled, closing her eyes for a brief moment, letting the warmth wash over her like a promise fulfilled. Kalen's hand found hers again, interlacing fingers, grounding her as always. We've survived, he said quietly, and now we live, truly, fully, as a pack, as a family, as something unbreakable. Her heart swelled, tears brimming, a mixture of joy, love, and relief. "We're home," she whispered, voice steady, full of certainty. "I'm home." The moon shone brightly, silver light spilling over the clearing, illuminating the bonds forged in fire, blood, and choice. And as Kaelin drew her close once more, their lips meeting in a tender, enduring kiss, Alara knew that this was more than love. It was belonging, it was promise, and it was home. The pack gathered near, silent but present, a living testament to unity, loyalty, and Thai. A triumph of choice over fate. Every eye reflected trust, every stance radiated protection, and Alara felt a deep, unshakable connection to them all. She looked up at Kaelin, amber eyes catching the moonlight, and smiled. "Thank you for everything." He chuckled softly, brushing her hair back. "No, Alara, thank you for staying, for choosing this, for being you." Together they stood beneath the full moon, surrounded by the pack, the forest, and the remnants of the battles they had survived. And for the first time, the night felt safe, the air alive with hope, and Alara knew, truly and irrevocably, that she was home.